concrete versus abstract thinking and why we wanted to talk about this today too. We kind of like, we started talking about it this morning. We're like, we should talk about that on live.
Yeah. So like the thing that we do, so when we're teaching, you got to understand here at Foundry, we run a boot camp. So we have a lot of live students. And so when I'm teaching concepts to students, when I'm in class, I'll see like learning blocks, like what happens, like what confuses them. And like the thing that I'm trying to figure out is like, okay, what is it that they get confused about so we can address those in the curriculum before they ever get a learning block. Right. But the number one thing is trying to me show you something and you accept it for what it is, you know, in the very beginning, so that they can we just got to show you learning. And one of the things that we do different at Foundry, and it's, I'll just give you, pull back the curtain a little bit, is you'll code along in the beginning and we're just saying, hey, just type this in. We just got to get this in, especially with HTML tags and stuff like that. You know?
And we get a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah, a lot of pushback. And then we'll come back later after you've done a little bit and lecture on the topic and say, and now what we've learned is you have a frame of reference to understand, oh, I know what that means now. Whereas before, when we lecture it before, they had no frame of reference and the uptick is next to zero.
Yeah, and it just goes here, doesn't it? It just
me explaining how to link a style sheet is like irrelevant, you know, until you've actually linked a style sheet and say, why do you do that? You know, the other thing that we come into, and we can expound on these later, is that people, they immediately try to memorize everything. And so every time, that's the reason why when I say just type this in, they're trying to memorize the HTML tag, the head tag, the what a div is, you know, the different semantic tags, and like all of the attributes that you could put on anyone. And they're always asking, oh, how many attributes there are? And I'm like, well, just assume there's a million.
Exactly. No. They want to understand, right? They want to know all of the things. They want to sit down with the book and like read through them all.
Right.
And try and memorize HTML. Them. Right.
Yeah.
It's just HTML, just the HTML tags. Yeah.
And then the other common question gives, so we've seen you do some style sheets here. What can I change with style sheets? Everything.
Right. And then the next one is, well, then
like,
how do I do that?
Tell me like what specifically. It's everything on the page.
Yeah.
What is that? That's a lot of stuff. And what they're trying to do is, in high school, college, you've always been given a set of facts and you regurgitate that facts on a test or a quiz. And it's really hard for you to adjust your learning style and the way you think. It's like, I don't need to memorize all this. I need to know that something exists, but how do I do it? I can Google that the time that I need it. I'm not going to, especially early on, man, you're just not going to memorize HTML at this point.
And that's a form of concrete thinking. So so we're not psychologists here or doctors or anything, but
no.
But you generally, as a child and through teens, right, you are a concrete thinker, whether you want to be or not. Most people, I would say, are a concrete thinker. You're taught a set of facts and you regurgitate a set of facts, and that's how you learn.
Right.
And then a
don't
point
touch
happens.
The stove. It's hot. What
Exactly.
Do you mean it's hot?
Exactly.
How hot is it?
It doesn't
just
matter.
Don't do it. You burn your hand.
Exactly.
How badly will I burn my hand? You know?
Yes.
We're talking plastic surgery, or what are we talking about? You know?
Yep. You are a concrete thinker. You just think like, and the great quote that I saw was, if you tell a child that everything has a silver lining, or every cloud has a silver lining, they will look up at the sky.
Right.
Right, because they will look to a literal cloud, and that's not what I mean. That's a form of abstract thinking. You're abstracting something onto that. So, but you don't get to that point until you're well into your teens. So, or most people don't get to that point until they're well into their teens. Yeah. So, you're taught this one way, and now you've got to change.
Yeah, and I think we're programmed, especially in the U.S. I'm sure that any other college or university is the same way. It's just all fact-based. Everything you learned is something you memorize, and and very few careers or things are like, this is how you just learn how to do something. Like, and the how is different every single time. So we look at mechanics, and we've talked about mechanics a little bit. Like, mechanics have to learn how to change the oil in a car. But if you roll up in an F-150 and they've like put the oil filter in a weird spot and takes a special tool, they don't have to go back to school for that.
Right.
They take what they know, apply it to the new problem. Like, oh, this must take a special wrench or whatever. And I think it's spark plugs are underneath on the F-150. Like, they're underneath, and you have to like lift the truck to change the spark plugs.
But they know they have to change the spark plugs.
That's all they know.
That's the key. They don't know where it is or exactly how to do it, but they know they have to change the spark plugs.
Yeah. So they put the truck on a lift. They look around. Oh, there they are. I see them. I can get to those. And whereas other cars, about 90% of the cars, the spark plugs are on the top. They're on the top of the car. So like,
Right.
if
Right. And a concrete thinker might open up the hood.
All the Tesla owners saying, we don't have spark plugs.
Right. And a concrete thinker might open up the hood and be like,
Right, yeah.
I don't see where the spark plugs are. They're not in the same spot they're always supposed to be. So I don't know what to do. I can't do it.
I don't know what
I need to go and read every manual out there to try and figure out like what's happening. And that's concrete.
Yeah, so like I think that's the main struggle that people face is thinking they have to memorize coding, which we say don't try to memorize. Yep. We always come back to the question is know what you want to do. In other words, ask yourself, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to build? What are the things that I'm trying to accomplish? Yep. And then
solving problems.
Yeah, then you can Google the next step of that. So here's a common thing in coding that confuses people early on. So we're talking about HTML here. Is like with a link statement, when you link in a style sheet, you use an attribute called href. And then when you type in an image tag and you say SRC, which stands for source,
yep,
they do the same thing, but
like
they have different attributes. Yeah. Like, why can't they both be called href? Why can't they both be called source? Well, there's a reason for that.
Right. But you don't need to know it.
You don't need to know. It doesn't matter.
It just is. You have to accept it.
Yeah, you can't change it anyway. I mean, so like, you can complain about that. And, not to like, it's not like, secret knowledge of the pyramids or anything, but href means it's loaded in parallel and source means it's actually in the page. And so the page, when it's reading down, it will keep going past a link statement and stop on an image until that image is loaded. Same thing with JavaScript. It'll hit that JavaScript source link and go, okay, I'm gonna load this file in right now, and it'll stop. That's why we put them at the end of the page so that the page will load. But early on, the first day of coding, I just want you to learn how to type a bracket and a close, and every bracket, every tag, and there's other rules in there, like every tag has a closing tag until it doesn't.
Right.
So like, it's like,
yeah.
So, like you just have to know that some tags don't do it. And you just, you do this through practice, repetition. Eventually you memorize this, but they're trying to memorize every possible attribute and everything in the very beginning. And it's hard.
And well, because, and the reason that it's hard is because there's an overwhelming amount of information.
Yeah.
Even if you just take HTML, just knowing all of the HTML tags off by heart, knowing all the ways you can select something in CSS or knowing all of the CSS tags, just that alone, you haven't even got to JavaScript yet.
I haven't got to coding.
You haven't even got to exactly, and it's like you haven't even got to all the like. Then you start talking about things like regex, and then it becomes like it's just silly to memorize. Absolute, just asinine to try and memorize that. Just unless you have a photographic memory, it's pointless.
Yeah, and I think out there's probably someone watching this like, well, I know how to write regex from scratch, and they do, and you're one of the 3 people that do.
Right.
But I would imagine even if you talk to that person, you could probably ask them something else that you think is mundane, and they're like, I just looked that up, I just Googled that, And it's probably because maybe writing complex regex is a function of the job, something they do every day, so the repetition forced them to memorize it. Most of us, we want to validate an email address. We just look up regex for emails and just use it.
Right.
And we don't
memorize
them.
The point is there that you are a problem solver because you're abstract thinking because you understand the problem, and the problem being I need to do this one thing that is validate an email address. How do I do that? That's you sorting the problem out. That's you fixing. That's you problem solving. Not just remembering, this line of regex does that. No. I just know that there is a line, and it's. You don't even have to know that it's regex. I'm sure if you Googled how to validate email, it would literally take you to it.
Tell you about regex and So like I think that's the problem is most people never ask themselves the question like, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to build?
Yep.
And that's really the start of problem solving. And then you can Google the rest. I mean, it's a little known secret, simple secret that senior devs, mid devs, junior devs, we're always Googling. It's the people that first learn that think they have to memorize, and then they think it's like cheating if you Google or something like that.
Right.
I'm like, what do you mean cheating? Like, I don't understand. Like, there's no requirement that we have to type the whole web page in without looking at anything.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement. And that comes from the test-taking methodology.
It does. It comes back to the college days, right? It's like you're forced to take these tests in a silo, and it's like you must remember all this stuff and regurgitate it.
Right, yeah. But even if you do memorize it, the other thing that I see students do mistake is some people do have great memories and they can memorize it. So they spend all their time memorizing tags instead of actually experimenting with the actual coding part. And they never learn, like, how does this work? How do I type
It's got to have
in?
context.
Context.
Without context, remembering the tags means nothing if you don't know when to use it.
Right, yeah. Or why you're doing it or anything like that. So you always ask, what am I trying to do? You know, and so you may not know this. In an HTML page, you have HTML, you have a head tag, and you have a body tag, and that's the HTML page, you know, like that's what it is. But there's a lot to it after that, you know.
Exactly. So Matt here says, "Damn, I totally thought other people legit learned regex. Apparently most people do what I do and just Google it." Exactly. Because it's filling up space in your brain that you just don't need to fill up with information. You just need to know, hey, regex is the thing that I need to go and do, and I'll just go do it when I need to go do it. It's that simple. Yeah.
You can impress your friends, Matt. You can learn how to remove special characters out of a string and just memorize that one at parties. And so how do you do that?
I don't know what kind of parties you go to, but if that's the kind of party you go to, I don't know. You're in trouble. You're in trouble.
I'm using /s quite a bit. I like /s. I like that. That's the way I roll. So.
That's funny. And here's the other trick too. I would say most people that have remembered those things, by the way, they've only remembered it because of one reason: repetition. They've done it a lot.
Yeah.
They've literally just used it a lot. So that's how they've remembered it. They haven't sat down one day and read the regex book. They've literally just used it a lot in whatever they've built, and it's just stuck through repetition, not through a concerted effort to try and memorize it.
Yeah. The first 3 weeks of our boot camp is trying to convince the student to overcome your fear that you're not going to memorize all this.
Right.
That somehow when you go on the job, they're going to ask you to do something and you have to do it from memory, and you don't. You have to learn to solve the problem first. And so us typing stuff in, say, hey, just follow on, just code along with me, is to start that repetition process. And I think the only way to learn how to code is actual code. Even if you break it, even if you can't type it in, you'll learn the basic rules that way. And then, you know, mother of invention is necessity. So it's true. You know, if you want to code, learn to code, write code. That's about it. Don't read books on coding. Regex party.
maybe that's what we need to do. I do see a bunch of your questions, by the way, and I will get to them, everybody. Definitely will get to them. So I'm queuing them up. But there's some that are like in context right now that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So this one, Aaron says, the urge to memorize is also related to how a lot of companies do tech reviews. We talked about this morning too. Yeah. No Googling allowed, all leak code. Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing ever, but we can't change it. And that's a topic for another day, that you've got to slay this dragon or you got to beat this anyway. But, you know, it's just like, it also leads to bad hires. Like there are a section of society that's what they do. I met a guy one time, he was on YouTube and we had a YouTube roundtable, and he was not a YouTube tech creator, and he was younger than I was. And he was trying to break into tech. So he starts a YouTube channel. His entire learning process was leak code. Like that's all he did. Like I'm just cramming leak code to get that Amazon interview in. I'm like, have you ever built a web page? No, I'm just cramming leak code. I'm like, really?
Right.
Like, really? That's what you're doing? Like, that's not the job. And, you know, but the tech interviews force people down this road. Right. And I do find it funny, like when you ask a obscure thing like let's take the one that's pretty famous, boxing and unboxing. What's the difference between unboxing and boxing? You know, and like in general, the way I look at this question is the compiler takes care of it. There are some things you need to consider, but for the most part, for web development,
doesn't matter. It's abstracted, really, right?
Does it matter? I mean, like, you know, my int went to a double, my double went back to int, my string went to, that's like, okay, you know, and it's like, well, you should know these things or you can't work here. Okay, is it more important that I know that or how to center something on the page? Because then there's a lot of dudes that come in there and like, I need you to like simple test. I need you to put this form on the page, center on the page, and collect the results from a submit button as an interview question. And you'd be surprised how many guys can't do that. Like they just can't do it. Like it's because they studied questions leak code style and they never really went to the part of like building things and coding things and making things work.
The hands-on part and that problem solving part and being hands-on is way more important.
Way more important
than the memorization. You need to be a problem solver, not a memorizer. If you can solve problems, that's what's going to ultimately do you well in the job, because that's literally going to be the job. I tweeted out something yesterday that was kind of similar. It was talking about finding typos. Like, if you don't like finding typos, you're gonna hate development. You're gonna hate it. It's gonna literally be your nightmare because you're solving a problem. The problem being like it doesn't run. 90% of the time, it doesn't run because you typed something wrong somewhere. It's not a logic problem, especially early on in the day. It's not a logic problem. The logic isn't the issue. Yeah. It's just you've just typed something wrong somewhere. You need to go find it. That's the problem-solving ability you need to have.
Yeah, the other thing too is this fear. The other fear that people have about working on the job is like, I'm going to make a mistake and create a bug, and we're like, yeah.
You are.
You are. You should. I mean, like, everyone does. I mean, like, everyone breaks everything. You mean it doesn't work the first time I type it in? No, it never does. And like, I mean, like, I always have this joke that if I'm like coding live in front of students, which I do quite a bit, and then I'll type something in, teaching a concept, and like, here we are, blah 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 blah. I'm going to code this all up, and I'm feeling real confident. I'm just going to run my page, and then I know that I've probably misspelled something or mistyped something, and then I take the opportunity to show them the debugger at that point.
Yeah.
Very rarely do I just like, does it just run first time out? Like, even the simplest things.
But here's the thing.
I'll miss something.
The new students expect you to have typed it in and have it work first time. They really do. And they're actually shocked when you get it wrong. And it's kind of like, you almost lose some credibility from some people. You're like, no. Trust me. Like, this is how everybody does it. Everybody does it this way. I'm not like inferior. This is not like, this is how it works. This is the job. You need to get comfortable with this.
And if there's a guy out there, he's telling you like, you know what I did yesterday? I typed in 100,000 lines of code and hit compile and it worked.
You just got lucky. Well, it's exactly. It's either untrue or you got or you just won the lottery. Like it happens, but it's unlikely.
Come on, man. That's a come on, man moment. Come on, man. It's just no way. I mean, like, maybe, but like, no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He won the lottery. Like, that's, but chances are, maybe not.
But I think trying to memorize everything, really focus on the problem solving technique. So the one question you can ask yourself is, what am I trying to build? And what am I trying to do? For example, one of those questions could be, I need my style sheet to be on my webpage. How do I do that? That's the question you need to ask. The thing that coding boot camps and practice makes you aware of are the things that are possible that you can do. Once you know, like, okay, how do I put a style sheet on a web page? Then you can Google that from W3 Schools or any number of resources.
Right.
And someone will tell you, it's a link statement. href equals the path to your thing. And, rel. Don't forget rel equals style sheet because it won't work. Those kind of things. And then they can say, well, how to get my JavaScript on a page? And they say, it's a script tag, script tag source equals blah, blah, blah. Yep. And then you're like, so I know those things because I've done them a million times, but for students, they don't, but you need to know that you need to do it. And once you get to that point, you can ask that question, what am I trying to do? Coding becomes so much easier to do. And even the most complex problem is, you need to break it down. So let's say that you're trying to build a bug tracker and you're like, what do I need to do? I need to build a bug tracker. Okay, that question's way too broad. It's like, let's break it down a little bit more. What's the first step of the thing I want to do? Yep. I just want a landing page. Okay, now let's just say you want a landing page. Okay, what happens on that landing page? What will happen? I want a logo on the left and I want some text on the right. Okay, that we can do. Now we've broken it down. The problem's small enough to where it's something that Googleable. I mean, you can't Google how to build a bug tracker. I mean, it seems like
because there is no one answer. Right.
It might say go to Foundry, but like,
hey, then we're doing agile.
That'd be nice. Yeah, we're doing all right. But in general, you need to break something down to the smallest possible component and ask yourself, what am I trying to do? And I think that's the start of the problem solving process.
And here you go. Ryoku, totally. You're going down the right path. You're doing this. Make sure so far in learning is breaking what I'm trying to make down into steps to code. But you're on the right path here. This is the right thought process you should be going through.
Yeah. And you can use comments to do that. I teach that a lot where we write down the comments, the steps.
You pseudocode a lot, right? Yeah.
Pseudocode with comments, and then I think that helps a lot. So you can start typing in the code editor like what I'm trying to do. And then I think then you can Google the things that you don't know how. Because a lot of times, man, even at senior levels, they'll be in a meeting and like they'll say, here's what we need to do. And they can walk at that meeting and go, man, I don't know how we're going to do that. Like,
because it seems monolithic, right? It seems big. It seems like a big problem to solve.
Yeah. You know, so like if you're in American Airlines, like fixed baggage claim would be the headline of the meeting. You know, like
I don't know. Make sure the flights are on time. Can you do that through code?
On time flighting. You know, so I think those are the things if you break it down. So
definitely. Right. I think we talked about this real quick, but also I just had a note here about the acceptance of things as well being a big takeaway from this. Just especially early on.
Early on, accepting, especially if you're following a tutorial along, you have to accept the tutorial at that point as it is, and you're not going to not know every single thing. So we have people, we try to help them on Discord, or we're trying to help students in their class, and they want to know every single thing at that moment. And
it's the why, isn't it? It's always why, and it's like, you can take that to the nth degree.
Yeah, and so like they ask a lot of questions, and I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to teach you to write a web page, not the understanding of HTTP as a low-level protocol. That's not what we need to talk about today. We just need to know that you need 3 tags on this page. You need an HTML tag, a header tag, and a body tag. So like if we can get that part down today, we're good. You know, we don't need to understand like how is a page served and those kind of things. Right. That'll come later as you learn more.
That's the thing. We're not saying there's no value in understanding that. That's not what we're saying. No. We're never saying you don't need to learn that ultimately, because maybe you do for whatever you're doing. But you also you can't learn everything at once. You need to learn what you need to learn and trust the process, trust the path.
Yeah. I remember I was at a conference one time and Scott Hanselman from Microsoft was there. And I remember he posed the question, what is the metal? And from his perspective, the metal was like very low level. Yeah. And he says, what's the metal to you guys? Is it JavaScript? Is that like the lowest form of thing anymore? And I can remember raising my hand and talking to him about this. And I posed the question. I was like, well, if JavaScript and these high level languages aren't the metal, then why do we create things like Visual Studio and VS Code?
Right.
That abstracts us from.
We need to abstract it from the metal. We need to be as far away from it as possible.
Yeah. So like, how far do we go? I mean, like to you, is the metal the x86 code that's in the processor?
Right.
I mean, like,
or is it the ones and zeros?
Like, right down to that. So I think that, for certain programmers that are building websites, it's way up here. That's why we have high level languages, so we don't need to understand the compiler.
I think for us as web developers, that's it. Exactly.
Because he's building Visual Studio, which is different. Maybe there's some things that go on there that they have to be able to do. As they're building a site that compiles C# code. Yeah, you got to understand the compiler if you're going to build that thing. But if you need a website for a trucking company, you just need to know how Chrome's going to display that page.
Because that's not the problem you're solving, right? You're not solving that. You're solving a different problem. There was a great book that I was reading about low-level stuff, which I find interesting. But it's one of those things that's like, it's a nice to know. Yeah. I'll tell you what it is here in a minute. But it was kind of interesting. It was like one of those, like, it taught you the kind of the math behind how computers work and those kind of things. Like, it is fascinating, but like, it's not a need to know, right? It's not like you don't need to know to be able to be a web developer. Like,
Yeah. And I think that's the key. And then I think the reason people quit early on is out of fear that they're not going to memorize everything. And here's what I'm going to tell you. You're not going to memorize everything. Even with topics that are seemingly low on the totem pole. People say, oh, HTML is not a programming language. Well, yeah, maybe it's not, but like try to build a web page without it. It's necessary. CSS the same way. Try to make a web page look like anything without CSS, and so you see these wars going on in different camps, and people want to elevate their education level, their metal higher than the others. I know more low level thing. You'll see it. The guy's like, I've been making Commodore 64s stand up and sing for dinner for 12 years. Like, well, who cares? I mean, like, no one uses that anymore.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
To me, it's fascinating. Yeah. It is. Here's the problem, though. Like, so here's the thing. Look, here's what Matt says. They started us with ones and zeros at college. This is the problem. Why. No, this should be something you eventually go back and look at. If you start there, it's like, oh, geez. By the way, that book's called Code, The Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software. Great book, but it talks about ones and zeros. It literally talks about ones and zeros. Like, it's interesting and it's fascinating, but do you need it to be a web dev? Nah.
I think if you spent 2 years learning the ins and outs of the kernel of, whatever, or write your own OS or whatever. Those are valuable pursuits. But if that person went and interviewed for a web dev job, they're not going to get it.
Right.
Because they don't have to build a web page. And so there are two different lot of knowledge sets here. And what we're saying is, when you're learning, especially web dev, you have to accept certain things exist, and this is how it works. And just use it, because there's other things that we need to teach you along the way that are way more important than exactly how do they parse that HTML page in the browser? How does Chrome do that? How does it turn those brackets into something I can read? It doesn't matter. We're not right.
Which you might find interesting, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay to find that interesting. It's okay to do that stuff. But if you have to decide, if you're trying to get a job and that's the route that you're going to go, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. So we're just saying that you have to accept some certain things. And then you have to think, once you do understand a topic, you have to apply that not concretely to the next problem. Is the other next leap you have to make is oh, I know this, therefore this must be true.
Right.
Not that you have to have the truth in both situations. You'll say, this is probably accurate because I know this. This probably works very similar to that. Therefore, if I can make a database call with Entity Framework that pulls back an entity, do I need a book on every possible entity that I'm ever going to pull back from? No. I mean, because it's infinite. Right. You can't know that. You have to know I want to go after this entity and I want to pull back a selection of statements that, a selection of that data on there. So and then you just know, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to do? That you got to keep reminding yourself that question. What am I trying to do? And what have I done that's similar to this that I can apply to this concrete problem that I'm faced with? And most people want the instructions for each individual task. And those types of people that think that way have a hard time picking up development, because the problem always changes. It's always different. Right. And the good programmers see, hey, that's just like that. It's exactly the same. It's
right. They can abstract think.
Yeah. They can abstractly think over it.
Yep. Okay. Let's do some questions. Because I got a ton. There's some really good ones in here. Some really good ones. Okay, cool. So first one, not directly related, but I did want to talk about this because we were talking about this before anyway. I thought we might do. I think we've done a couple videos on this anyway. But questions for anyone with all the tech job laying off people. Will it become harder to get a tech job because of the economy?
Yeah, I think. Okay, let's put this in. Is the economy? Are we going to go to a recession? Seems like we are.
Let's just say yeah.
Let's just say yes. So what happens in a recession? Well, businesses retract, or the amount of commerce that's going on gets smaller, which means that there are less jobs out there. Okay. However, if you're trying to get a job right now, and that's the economy you face. So would you rather be a coder or a customer service rep?
Right.
You'd rather be a coder because those jobs are more important to the business than if people quit calling the business, then they need less customer service reps, but they may still invest in what they're building, So yeah, but also too, the other thing that I think people are influenced by is big tech. So let's look at Microsoft specifically,
definitely. No question.
Facebook, Amazon, Netflix to some degree. I don't put them in the same class as those companies because they have a totally different business. But all of those people have done layoffs in the last 6 months. Why? Well, the economy was so amazingly hot, and the money was so cheap. They hired a bunch of people, tons and tons of people. So maybe those particular companies, when they face a downturn, they're like, okay, let's lay off a few people. And so, if you see 1% of the workforce in Microsoft getting laid off, people assume it's all developers. It doesn't mean it's all developers. It could be lots of things. It could be, okay, this section, y'all have one admin now. Used to have your own, used to have 12 admins, now you have one.
Right.
Y'all got to share the one lady or the one guy here to be your admin. That's what you got to do. Or maybe it is customer service where, okay, we're going to put 20% reduction in because our phone calls have reduced by 20%. So we're going to reduce those customers. But the people making .NET and C# and Visual Studio and all those kind of things, probably going to stick around. And the ones that are leaving or getting laid off probably weren't essential. In other words, you're not committed to your craft and you weren't really as
right. Productive. It's an opportunity for them to kind of streamline, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're right. We hear about it from the big companies a lot.
Yeah.
We hear about these giant companies doing this. We don't hear about everything else, which, by the way, overall, the job market is still increasing.
Still pretty good, and it always
They're
has
still
been.
adding new jobs. So
yeah, so so the economy isn't in a recession. You do have a retraction over 2 straight quarters. And you want to look what the economist says. If you look 2 straight quarters, we have less GDP growth than others. But that doesn't mean that it impacts just text independently. And so, Adam, your question is: are you, because of the recession, are you just going to quit working altogether? Or are you going to go get a job? And so, if you're going to go get a job, you might as well get a tech job. It pays better. It's more recession-proof than others. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee in life, but I think it's definitely better than all the other kind of segments out there. With the exception of maybe like healthcare seems to consistently grows really high. But tech and healthcare are 2 jobs that I think are pretty recession-proof. People don't quit going to the hospital because Netflix has less subscribers.
Right.
So right. So I don't think so. And then I think too, man, don't look at the overall macro news, like the business news out there, CNBC, all those guys. They do like the negative stuff. They do like to see when things are on fire. And just because the stock market's down also doesn't mean that a company's going under. If you want good news, Tesla just reported record earnings, in this down economy. Netflix just increased their overall growth subscribers, and we thought they were dead like 6 months ago, and now they suddenly have growth again. Like, what happened? Well, they just companies pivot, they change, they look at what they're doing.
Have I been watching anything on Netflix? What did I watch? Oh, I did. I watched something on Netflix yesterday. There you go. Maybe I helped turn them around.
British Baking, you're watching.
Oh yeah, the baking show. Yeah, the baking show's on there.
Talk about it.
No spoilers for anybody.
No spoilers. We're not saying who got.
Is that a weird show for us to watch? The baking show? I don't know. It's a good show though.
I like it.
Something about that show's good. No, I watched that Dracula thing that's on there. Dracula Untold. Okay. It's good. It's actually a good movie. I'd say it's good.
It's in the Morbius camp.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. Is it that bad? I don't know. More.
I think when it came out in theaters, people said they should have renamed it Dracula and should have never been told. It's like
yeah. Like I'm saying, I'll give it a 5, a solid 5 out of 10.
It's a good Netflix rental.
Yeah, it's okay. But, yeah.
I like the actor in it. It's pretty good.
He is good. So, yeah, he is good. Yeah.
Okay,
we got that right.
Appreciate
Let's
it.
just finish the book.
Yeah.
And
Breaking the Code.
It's a follow-up, which, by the way, the book, let me just go back to that, because I never do a good job of plugging this stuff very well. But it is in the description down below. You can go buy the book.
Yeah, if you want to buy the book. It's a good book.
Do I have it here? I do have it here. Hold on.
I'm in the office here. I don't have it anymore. There you go. Breaking the Code.
So you can go grab it on Amazon. The 5 steps to a life-changing software development. And you can turn to page, I don't remember the page.
97.
95.
95, okay.
Page 95 for the awesome picture of Spider-Man.
The awesome picture of Spider-Man,
which for copyright reasons we can't show on stream.
And so I'm wondering what Janka thought of what do you think of the Spider-Man picture? You read the book. Let's let everyone know what you thought.
Yeah. Let us know. Put it in the chat. What do you think of that page with the Spider-Man? But there was a question too. How does one get better at logical thinking?
I think it's just practice, just solving problems, breaking it down step by step, being able to formalize things into smaller steps. And I think that's it. You just get better at really refining your, what am I trying to do statement question, and then doing that step by step and making this, because coding is very small, minute things that you have to do for each line of code that does something that reads to the overall problem. So I go back to my scenario of I want to build a bug tracker. That's a broad question. You need to break it down until that small question is something either you know how to do or you know what to do, but you don't know exactly what the syntax is, and then you can go look that up. So it just gets, and then, things that we test here, we test logical thinking to get into Coder Foundry. So you could go take our dev quiz. Yeah. I think it's a good test to see if you think this way. We have that in the chat too.
Coderfoundry.com/quiz.
Yeah. True, false statements, those kind of things help you get better at logical thinking.
It does ask you for your name and contact details at the end, but if you just want to take it for fun, just put in don't contact me or something. Just put in something obvious so that we don't try and reach out to you.
Yeah, but if you get 100 on it, we're going to call you and say, hey, what's up? So
I just put that in chat. I'll also say, like, how do you get better at it too? So if you're heavily in the concrete thinking camp, and you can kind of identify that you're in that camp, you can speak to a therapist could help you with that too. That's something. It is a mental thing. So you can change your way of thinking. It's not just about coding. If you're heavily in that camp and you find that difficult, you can change your mindset. You really can, and somebody like a therapist could help you with that too. So it's not just about practice as well, but you can actually change your mindset. And I think it's about identifying like what kind of thinker you are and why you can't get past that. I think a therapist can help you with that. Okay,
cool. So if you got something burning, hit us on the super chat, and we'll make sure you get in. But Kevin's got a few queued up here, and we'll keep asking some questions.
Yeah. We have enough to take us through the end. So yeah, if you do have one, you want to guarantee it, super chat it. Otherwise, we'll keep going through these.
Little taco money for us.
Yeah. What says, yay, you guys is awesome. I'll take it that way, but thank you. Your tips about switching interview into demo helped me to get my first part-time job. Awesome.
That's
the killer tip.
Awesome.
That's
the
one.
I think the reason it's pushed back, I've been trying to think about, like, when I talk to people, like, that will never work. Number one, I think the two reasons why switching to interview and doing a demo, people think it doesn't work, is because they think it violates the social norm. I got to go in there and answer their questions. The second thing is the interview advice, for whatever reason, is heavily skewed towards the FANG interview practice, so specifically the Amazon and the Google interview practice, which isn't necessarily like this. And so I've never sat through one of those, but I know they're all based around coding quizzes and those kind of things. Yeah. But here's what I want you to think about. And we've talked about this a lot. And I don't know if this will work, but I know it'll work on 95% of the interviews you go to that are in FANG. Interview absolutely works every single time. But like, let's say that you go through the Amazon interview and there's 5 candidates for the same job. And all of you ace the coding quiz stuff, and you're sitting there in front of the decision maker, and eventually you're going to get down to, like, so why do you want to be at Amazon? Like, what is it about Amazon that's got you interested in this role? And people can say, well, I love Amazon Prime Day, or something like that, or I want to work on this, or, whatever it is. And you could do that, or you could say, I really like to code. Let me show you the thing I'm working on and demo. And I think that when you demo that you're writing technology, you're writing websites, and they can see something that you've built that works, it is powerful, man. Like, it's really hard to come away from that and go, I like this other guy who is more abstract. This guy showed me something. He showed me something that's working. And so it removes fear, especially of the fear of hiring, I guess. They're always afraid they're gonna make the wrong hire, especially for you guys that are going at first software job, having something to demo. You need to demo every single time you walk in that door, like every time, because they don't know if you can do it. And they're trying to project into you to say, do I think he can do it? Is she smart? Is he smart? Can they do it? Do they know how to code? And then they'll look at your project and like, okay, remove all doubts. You just showed me something that works, and it works. It's very powerful. So I'm glad it helped you out, Bart.
As a follow-up to that too, Ben has a question. How practically do I demo my project in an in-person interview? If I'm across the table, have the first interview tomorrow for web dev. I can't put myself in that scenario.
So you bring your laptop. You bring your laptop, so like you bring it in there. So like, here's the thing that you got to be prepared. And we say that we've done a lot of videos on this, Ben, but in general, you have to be prepared to demo. But here's the 2 things about demoing that can screw you up. Number one, your laptop takes 42 minutes to start up. All right. It needs to be booted up before you get in.
It needs to be on the table. When you walk in, have it under your arm. Like, literally don't have it in a bag. Literally just walk in with your laptop under your arm. Sit it down and just open it up.
And so just leave it there. Start out with this question. Hey, and I know you got a lot of questions for me. So why don't we look at the stuff I'm working on, because I think that shows you best what I can do to see if I'm a fit here. And they may say yes or no. And if they say no, that's fine. Leave it on and make sure that if you're going to a website that's published, or you're going to Visual Studio or VS Code or something like that, that IDE is already running, and it's just like you can just spin it around and look at it. Yep. Right there. Now, if you want to say, hey, can I get on the projector? Know how to hook up projectors before you do that. Like, you got to know that cold. Yep. They all kind of work the same way, but like the last thing you want to do is fiddling with the HDMI cable. And then not all conference rooms really work well. A lot of times they they don't use it all the time, and no one knows where their remote is. So just be prepared to bring your own stuff in. I've seen people, and this isn't for everyone, I've done it, where in my bag I have a little mini projector. So even if I don't have a projector, I just like pop it down, set it up, mirror my screen, and it's on the wall.
Yep.
I may have to turn out the lights, but like, it works pretty good. But in the most part, you can probably just spin your laptop around and show it to them.
Yep.
That's what I would do.
That's what you want. And by the way, so your technique there was so if you just want to show it to them straight away, the other thing is, like you mentioned, was leaving it open. And if you get a question about something, redirect it to your code. That's the second technique.
Yeah. So it's open. The open it comes from the lawyer terms, like my opening statement. Hey, I've got an opening statement. I walk in there. You're setting the agenda for the meeting. You always have an opening statement. Why am I here? I'm here to show you that I can code. That's why I'm here. You're trying to get an offer. And so this is a sales job. So you opening statement, say, hey, look at my code. They say, nah, we got some questions. The very first question they ask you, relate it to code and say, hey, I did something similar to that. Let me show you how I used objects in my bug tracker. If they're asking about object-oriented programming or whatever, or classes, or what is a class? What's this difference between an object and a class? Very classic C# interview question. Probably get it 95% of the time. You can say, well, an object is an instance of a class, or you could say, I was writing a bug tracker and I have this ticket class that describes the ticket. And then when someone wants to create a specific ticket, we create an object or an instance of that ticket. Let me show you the controller that does that. Boom. Yep.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Be brave. Don't be...
Be brave.
Be brave. Initially, don't feel bad about, like, putting it out there initially. And if they say no, don't let that, like, completely shut you down. Still be brave. Yeah. Because trust me, if you answer that question, anybody on the other side of that table, they really do want to look at your code. They really do. Yeah. It's just...
Yeah, I think they do. And then nothing too, Ben, I would say this. Make sure it works.
Oh yeah.
If it's broken...
Demo fail is bad.
Demo fail? Ooh, that's bad.
Yeah. You might as well not have shown it.
Yeah. So just make sure it works. And so what we say is stay to a script that is working. Make sure that this is tested before you walked in there and you've looked at it a million times and when you push that button, it's going to work. If you're looking at the button on the page and you're going like this, when you want to push it, you're like, I think that'll work.
Oh, look, he has a follow-up question. Look at this. Look at this. This is exactly what we're talking about. So my main project is unfinished. Should I still demo it?
Only demo working.
Only demo what works. Yeah. If you got parts that don't work, take them out, or just demo the parts that do work. Exactly.
Just show the work in process. You can show work in progress, but only show work in progress. Other features are not in the project.
Well, imagine if they grab the laptop and they start moving around and you're like, please don't click on that. Please don't click on that. Just remove it so they can't click on it because it's gonna look bad.
Here's the thing that you need to think about, Ben, is think about this. Your main project, which in your mind is unfinished. They have no idea what the scope of your project is. And they don't know that you've got 32 features planned. The only thing you show them is the one feature you have done. And that's it. And that's all you need to do. Take up 5 minutes. You don't need to demo the whole thing. In fact, what we try to tell people is stay in a specific area and just demo that area. You don't have to show the complete bug tracker, not a walkthrough. You're demonstrating your knowledge of like a specific coding question. And that's the difference between, demoing it from login to soup and nuts and just talk about bug trackers. But, you can, but like it's better to answer a specific question with code. And then they start asking you questions about your code. And when they ask you questions about your code, well, how did you do this? You need to sit back and go, I just won. Because now you've hooked them in. Now they're very excited about what you're doing. So hope that helps, Ben.
Let's see this one. Guys, is it okay to use Bootstrap, or should we focus on native CSS principles like Flexbox and Grid? I've heard many times using Bootstrap is not good practice.
It's just the most widely used CSS framework on the face of planet Earth. I mean, yeah, it's a good practice. We teach it here. Yeah. So here's the thing about Bootstrap. It's built by Twitter. It is still massively supported by Twitter. New versions just came out. It's getting better and better. And so CSS principles like Flexbox are great. You can also use CSS Grid in some cases. Well, you can use Flexbox with Bootstrap as well. And so a lot of times we're mixing the two. A lot of times where we still have our independent style sheet. Maybe I want to flex a certain element, but I don't want to use the class modifier inside of Bootstrap to do that. I want to do that natively in the style sheet. And there's reasons why you would do that sometimes, but so you have to do both. But man, I mean, if you can start up a 2-column grid in 30 seconds because Bootstrap, you should, instead of trying to re-engineer a grid system from scratch every time. And so like a lot of people that say this part that I just find hilarious is they won't use Bootstrap, but they'll use their own grid system they've built from.
They'll spin their own one and they'll just reuse it. It's the same thing.
I mean, like it's the exact same thing. So the other thing about Bootstrap that people don't like is that it's very opinionated about components.
Historically, it's been way more opinionated than it is right now.
I mean, it has some components, but you don't have to use those. But now, and it's been this way for a while, you can use Sass to compile your own style sheet that's Bootstrap native style sheet and change it. The thing that came out in 5.2, which is just like recently, is that now most of the variables and all the components are written by CSS variables. So like you can just create the class right inside your style sheet without compiling or using Sass or anything, and just make your own CF orange button right in Bootstrap. It's very easy to do now. So that's really, really powerful, used by lots of people. I think we see things on jobs like must know Bootstrap in jobs, It's like an LFG for a game.
Exactly. We totally see it.
Must have this gun or know what to do.
Yeah, we totally see it in job descriptions, 100%. Because it's still used. It's definitely used. It's super popular.
The other thing that is very kind of important that you understand when we look at creators, and I'm one of the creators in the economy. Okay, so I'm in part of the creator economy. I make courses, I make things like that. But a lot of times people are making creators and they latch onto the new thing because that's going to get them engagement, when the new thing is not used as much. So let's take Tailwind, for example. Creators are all over it. Tailwind's the best. Tailwind's this, Tailwind's that. Tailwind's awesome. And the use of Tailwind is growing, but it's still hovering under 20%, whereas Bootstrap is at 80% of all websites. So like, what do you do? I mean, like, no one talks about WordPress, but it's still growing. I mean, so everyone wants to talk about the next framework or the next JavaScript framework, and they're, less happy about Node, and like, oh, Next.js is the thing, because it's next. What about Next.js and super awesome JS? And, because that's what they want to do. The creator economy can take a new topic and drive engagement that way. It's not necessarily true what's being used in the environment. Coder Foundry, we're a little bit different. We try to say, okay, this is what's mainstream today, and this is what you can make a career on. So yeah, Bootstrap. And it's not like it's not being updated. It's not like it's obsolete. It's very forward thinking. It's very cool. And
5.2 just came out.
We're still working on it, man. They're still pushing it out, and I don't expect Elon to kill Bootstrap. Maybe he does when he owns it. I don't know. I hope not.
We were talking about the other day, like how much features they're adding. Like 5.2 is a dot increment, and they added these new CSS variables
for all the components.
It's like, wow, okay. I thought they would have added that in 6. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's good. There's good updates going into it, definitely.
Look at NC-17 Hero. This is what I'm talking about. Like, and I love it that he's so honest about this stuff. The last one, he says, "Yeah, I love Tailwind."
It's so flexible, but I'm using Bootstrap on a project right now.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Just tools to
so we know NC-17 Hero from here. We don't really. I don't know if we've talked to him before in person. Maybe we have. But in general, here's the thing about him. He's already coding somewhere. He's already doing stuff. Therefore, he's learned Bootstrap, and now he's picking up Tailwind, which is great. That's what I advise all people to do. Keep learning, keep doing new things. I'm not saying don't learn Tailwind. I'm just saying if you had to know one or the other right now today, Bootstrap is superior because of the use of it. I'm not saying it doesn't have problems. There's problems with Tailwind too. Like, it's flexible, yeah, but there's some other problems with it too.
I would say if you're a beginner with Tailwind, the learning curve between Tailwind and Bootstrap is way different. Yeah. Way different.
But he's right. They're all just tools, and they get stuff done. He's absolutely right. I'm not going to start a war over which CSS framework you're going to use. So I just picked one that's very, very common, and I'm teaching that. And then we've talked about it. Should I be teaching Tailwind? I'm like, it needs to get a little bit more popular, and then I will.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah,
exactly. That's the thing too.
Switching over, and I'm like, well, that's because everyone's using it, man. I mean, like, I approach it from a practical standpoint. What can I get a job with? Not because I'm like religiously, follow Bootstrap, I pray at the altar of Twitter. I don't do that. It's just like, it's a CSS framework, man, but it's really good though.
Yep. Okay. Let's do a couple more just real quick. Brad Powell says, Coder Foundry, is the amount of JavaScript taught on the self-paced complete.NET Bootcamp good enough to get hired, or is a framework needed?
If they're using framework, then you're going to have to learn React. or Angular? Yeah. So our framework that we're using is ASP.NET. So that's the approach that we're taking. So look at ASP.NET, React, Angular, those three things kind of do the same thing. They have different approaches to it. One is a multi-page application framework. JavaScript framework centric like React and Angular are single page apps. They do the same thing with a different way. So like if you're going to go for a React job, you're going to need to know React. And so that's something that you can pick up later in life, but like if you go for ASP.NET job, you won't be using React. And then
what we teach is
JavaScript,
exactly
vanilla
correct.
JavaScript is enough. Yeah. But you need to know JavaScript before you can even approach React. I mean, you can learn them both at the same time, but I think it's going to be kind of hard. You need to know
it's hard to differentiate between the two, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where's the line? Like,
yeah, because it's all JavaScript. So there's React is a framework using JavaScript to inject things into one index page. So you have one common index page, index.js page that's injecting components into that thing so you can show it on one page. ASP.NET has a thing called Layout Master, and it has the same thing where it's injecting things into that, but it allows you to have multiple pages. And then there's one layout framework that covers all of these multiple pages at once. So it's a little bit different in that it operates by postback, but like in general, you're gonna have to know a framework like React if you want a React job, but we teach ASP.NET as our framework. So you can look at the .NET 6 course too. That's the newer stuff. If you're going through the self-paced coding bootcamp, also pick up the .NET 6. That's newer.
Okay, you have time for a couple more?
Yeah, okay. We got time. We're in Siberia, we got plenty of time.
Tasmato says, I just want to say thank you for the advice you gave out. I got a job in my first interview after 6 months of working on applying your advice and working on the portfolio. Awesome.
Nice.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Massive congratulations. We love it when people come here and like, hey, we got a job. Like, we don't care whether if we helped a little bit. That's awesome for us. We helped in any way, but you put all the work in. That's very, very cool. This goes back to something we were talking about earlier. Ogie here says, so we need to focus on concepts of programming language instead of syntax.
It is both. I'm not saying that you don't know any syntax whatsoever. What you need to know is that you're not going to memorize every syntactical thing there is in coding.
Repetition will get you the syntax that you need to know.
Yeah,
on a daily basis. Concepts of programming language definitely important, but it's also just the problem-solving part, not necessarily even the concepts at a high level. Right. It's often just the problem-solving part.
So like there's things like, I'll ask the question in the bootcamp here just to give you a little bit, pull back the computer. And it's like, hey, we're going to build this. What programming concept do I need to be using here? And I ask them, what construct, what do I need to do? And then someone say, you need a function. Okay, we need a function. Bam, 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 bam. What else do I need? And then finally it comes around. You need a loop. Okay, let's write a loop in JavaScript, or let's write a loop in C#. Those two things, as a matter of fact, look the same. But if you're looking at Python or some other languages, loop may look a little different. The thing is, do you know what a loop is, and do you know why you would need one? And then do you know what an array is? So all of those things come through practice of coding, and you'll figure out the things that you need to know in order to be successful. And then you may not know how to do it exactly, but you can Google the syntax of how to write a loop in JavaScript or a for each, those kind of things.
This is interesting. Joseph, my son's super into Minecraft and Roblox. Roblox has its own dev kit. Minecraft's a little trickier to do. Is there any good way to get him into coding beyond using Scratch and make code arcade? You're on the right track.
If he wants to build games, that's kind of where it is,
Yeah.
So
we messed with the Roblox editor a little bit before.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Minecraft can be trickier to do. Java.
Yeah, if they're getting to grips with that stuff, I say they're learning the concepts. You'll be surprised. Like, ask him like what a loop is or something. He'll probably be able to answer it. Which, if you just get that stuff down, it's going to help him massively. But I think when you're a kid, you've really got to have an interest in it, because you're not thinking about a job at that point. You're thinking about, do you genuinely... So having him build like a website or something, if he's bored doing that, it's just going to turn him off from it. So just to have him build things that he likes. But the gaming is key, and Scratch is awesome for kids for sure. I think you're doing the right things.
Yeah, and then there's some other ones that teach generics, some other solo
Yeah,
code.
there's like so look at that grasshopper thing that Google has. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. But you'll probably find that's even too basic for him if he's doing this other stuff already.
Yeah, and then there's the Legos have kits that build robots to make them work, and there's a visual programming language around those. Now that's expensive. I mean, so just if you're going to go that route, just get your credit card out, Joseph.
But I'm sure he'll pay you back eventually when he gets his high-tech
when he gets that
job.
That dev job, he comes the next Elon. So, but yeah, so the Legos are kind of cool, and it has a very visual, like drag and drop programming language. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, let's wrap it up. We'll be back next Thursday. We have a new video coming out tomorrow. Please watch it. Yeah. Please like it. That would be great. It'll be.
Oh, you know what we need to keep talking about is we hit 90,000 subs, Kevin.
We did. So yeah. Our giveaway happens at 100,000.
I'm telling you, people. Like we've looked at the numbers here. There's a good chance that you win this thing. Yeah. We're gonna give it away to somebody.
I mean, we're talking about like hundreds of people have entered, not thousands.
Not thousands, hundreds. Like this is way better odds to win our giveaway than winning anything in the lottery right now. So it's a good shot. Which a pretty good shot.
Which I did buy a lottery ticket. It's at 500 million, right? So you got it.
That's when you buy them. Sure. When it becomes life-changing money at 500 million, that's when we. I
promise everybody, if we hit the lottery in 5 million, we'll do one more of these shows.
One more.
I'll show up and just be like, I kind of won. Sorry.
Wearing a jacket of dollar bills, like the hundreds condos on there,
But I promise to come back at least once, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean.
So anyway, check it out.
We'll still be here, lottery winnings and all.
Yeah. Someone's asking, what are we giving away? We'll at the time when we give it away, we'll just figure out what the models are. I don't know yet.
Exactly. But yeah, because they've changed since we originally put it out. But it'll be whatever the latest one is. It'll be I think it's still an Oculus 2. We don't have an Oculus 3 yet. It'll be whatever the Air Mac is now. I don't know if it's an M1 or an M2. It might be an M2 now. Yeah. I think it's an M2 Air, but whatever.
Luckily, we didn't buy all the stuff when we were giving it away. And
we decided we would purchase it at the time because we know how it is. Nobody wants to win an old MacBook. You want to win whatever
an old MacBook. Right? So, it's only slightly used.
Yeah, maybe I need to go and change the pictures on the thing too to the newer updated stuff, at least from now. So
all right, cool.
Oh, sweet.
Donating to the Carne Asada
Taco Fun today.
I like it.
I like it. We've got a new taco place in town, by the way.
You do?
Yeah.
And it's cool.
It's cool. So good. Thank you. We're going to go there. It's like this legit tiny little place.
Yeah, it's a little hut, a little taco hut that you can just drive up around.
And you know what? From the new place, it's practically walkable.
Yeah.
It's that close.
It is. It's that close. It really is.
So
just up the hill. Go
get
some tacos.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably it's not even a 5-minute walk from the new place. It's close.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll hit that up. Thank you, Repowered. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you guys later. Keep coding. See you next week.
Catch you guys later.